CBS News is projecting Phil Murphy has won re-election in New Jersey. Murphy is the first Democratic governor to do so since 1977. Murphy's Republican opponent, Jack Ciattarelli, is not ready to concede. His campaign calls it, quote, irresponsible of the media to make the call when ballots are still being counted and the race is so close. Governor Murphy's margin of victory is thin. The candidates are separated by just under 2 points. The results came as a surprise to many in what is widely considered a blue state. It's also raising red flags for Democrats, who suffered a major loss in Virginia, where Republican Glenn Youngkin was elected governor. For more on this, I want to bring in New Jersey-based political analyst Steve Adubato. Steve is the author of Lessons in Leadership. Steve, welcome. Great to have you with us. So you have covered politics in New Jersey for 3 decades. You served as New Jersey's youngest state senator in the 1980s. There are few people with more insight into the game than you. So Governor Murphy's victory is razor thin. Did you see that coming? And why did polls and predictions struggle to call this race?
First of all, it's great to be with you, but I have to tell you, I didn't see this coming. And anyone who says they saw it to this degree or that it would be this close is lying to you. Yes, in the introduction, you said New Jersey is a blue state. Tanya, we're a blue state, but we're not a blue state like Massachusetts or California. It's a purple state. It is a state where the suburbs decide who the governor will be. And the fact is the suburbs in New Jersey are Democratic, Republican, and a lot of independents. And those independents broke largely for Jack Ciattarelli, a Republican, Phil Murphy, a progressive, far left in the eyes of many, Democrat, had a very hard time connecting. And frankly, bringing in Bernie Sanders at the last minute may have looked great nationally to some in the progressive wing, but not in New Jersey. It was not the smart strategic move because the governor got hurt in the suburbs by being seen as a tax and spend liberal, even though he won by a small margin. P.S. 1.1 million more Dems than Republicans should never have been this close.
Interesting. So what impact do you think this particular election will have on the midterms? Is there anything in particular we should be looking out for, specifically in New Jersey, which seats could be vulnerable?
So there are 2 congressional seats that are in the state that are in play. 2 with Democrats who won by very small margins. They are going to be challenged next year. In those districts, Tanya, Jack Ciattarelli beat Phil Murphy roundly. What I mean by that is those districts, if you took the Democrat and Republican votes, they would not have Democratic members of Congress there right now. Now, with the very small margin that the Democrats have in the House, those 2 seats in New Jersey by themselves could have a major impact on ultimately who controls the House. And the other issue is this. The Democrats better get the message that you can't be as far left, the defund the police, the very large $1 trillion that are being talked about in this package, Build Back Better. That's great. But in New Jersey, there are Democrats who are more moderate and want to know what things cost. And frankly, Phil Murphy and some of the other Democrats don't seem to get that message.
So aside from bringing in Bernie Sanders, what do you think cost Governor Murphy the most votes? And what was Jack Ciattarelli able to do to galvanize voters?
First of all, Phil Murphy, a decent, honest, good person who was, like every governor in the nation, dealt an incredibly difficult hand dealing with the pandemic. He did a very good job, in my view, dealing with the pandemic, except for a couple things. Number one, the nursing home issue, sending people back, as Andrew Cuomo did, from their nursing homes, went to the hospital with COVID, came back into the nursing homes. More than 8 million people, 8,000 people, I'm sorry for saying that, passed. And the governor does not take responsibility for that. He blames the nursing homes. And the other quote, I'm going to read this word for word. The governor said at one time, and Jack Ciattarelli used this quote, if taxes are your issue, then New Jersey's probably not your state. You can't say that. Ciattarelli hammered away at that, and he scored points, particularly, as I said, in the high-taxed, highest property taxes in the nation, suburbs of New Jersey. Democrats better get that message, not just in New Jersey and Virginia, but across the nation.
All right, so I want to talk about another New Jersey race. AP is calling the state Senate president race for New Jersey for Republican Edward Durr. He unseats longtime Senate leader and Democrat Steve Sweeney. This comes as a shock to Democrats because Durr spent fewer than $200 on his campaign. So what happened there?
Mr. Durr, a commercial truck driver, and the only reason I say that is because he has no experience in government politics. He spent $158. Steve Sweeney, 12 years as the Senate president, 20 years in the legislature, a conservative-leaning independent Democrat, the kind of Democrat I was just talking about that wins in New Jersey. But Phil Murphy lost so badly in the southern part of the state where Senate President Steve Sweeney is, that Sweeney got swept up in this. And the Democrats are going to have to figure out who leads that caucus moving forward. I was actually just talking to a state senator before I got on, Tanya, and he said, look, we're going to have to move to the middle very quickly, which is where Steve Sweeney was. And we'll see what happens moving forward. But New Jersey is blue, but as I said, not as blue as people think.
Well, talking about that, the blueness of New Jersey, is the breed of Democrat that is, prolific in New Jersey, is it the working class sort of, class that used to be reliably Democratic, but that we've seen shift in the past few elections? Is that the sort of group we're talking about here that can go back and forth?
You have it right, Tanya. I mean, think about this. Just 12 months ago, Donald Trump lost New Jersey by 16 percentage points to Joe Biden. And in all the districts, all the suburbs we're talking about, Trump didn't win. Trump is not liked in the New Jersey suburbs. Yes, he has some popularity, but it's not Alabama. It's not Mississippi. It's not a lot of other states or Texas. The fact is, the kind of New Jersey Democrat that has to be appealed to is the kind of Democrat that says enough is enough. $4 really for a gallon of gas? The supply chain issue. I can't get gifts for the kids. Listen, everybody deals with that. But when you have a state where the highest property taxes in the nation disproportionately in New Jersey suburbs, I happen to live in Montclair, very high tax community. The bottom line is this: if you basically say free this, free that, and you're not going to tell me how to pay for it, when you do, you tell me, well, just take more money from people who've earned a few bucks. That's not going to sell in New Jersey or nationally, in my view, particularly in the suburbs of the state and nation.
All right. Well, Steve Adubato, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your perspective.
It's my pleasure, Tanya.